Businesses thrive by knowing customer insights because today's insights are tomorrow's facts. At iResearch, we live and breathe insights. And despite searching high and low, we were unable to find a customer insights podcast that answers one of the most important questions in business. Why do customers do what they do? So we launched one. Hi, I'm your host, Darshan Mehta. Today I'm speaking with Benjamin Moróne. He is an American entrepreneur and innovator based in Warsaw, Poland. He is the founder of Zabota, a company focused on recruiting top talent in Eastern Europe and Latin America. Zabota is a recruitment firm that connects businesses with pre-vetted English-speaking talent from Eastern Europe and Latin America. And he has found some interesting ways to make the right fit at much lower costs. Welcome, Benjamin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for being on Getting to AHA. So I'm curious, what inspired you to establish Zabota, and what are some of the aha moments that put you on this path where you are now?
Yeah, so one of the first ones happened when I was significantly younger than I am now. I was probably like 11 or 12 at the time, so fifth or sixth grade. And I wanted to be a professional soccer player. But after discovering YouTube and watching lots of videos of children much younger than myself with much higher skill level in soccer, I realized, this professional soccer goal may not be the best path forward. So I remember reading in the news, or maybe it was like in FIFA, they had some, like the video game, they had some sort of like transaction where Messi or Ronaldo made several $100 million. And I didn't really have a concept of companies that much at that time, but I thought, interesting, someone has paid Ronaldo $200 million or something. And I just thought it was like a person. So I was like, well, how does that economy work? How does someone give someone $200 million? And I thought, well, maybe I should be a business person. And we had some sort of assignment at school where we were asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? You need to do some research. And I thought, oh, I could own a soccer club or be a business person. And so that's kind of my first kind of movement towards entrepreneurship. Much later, I would say August or July of 2022, I had been traveling Central Eastern Europe. I was in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I had met a lot of very interesting entrepreneurs in my travels. Been to 20 plus countries at this point, and all of the people that I had met who were very, very interesting ran their own sort of businesses or were involved at the partnership level in multiple businesses. If it was in the restaurant industry, if it was in affiliate marketing, agency space, tech company space, these were all very interesting individuals who had very nice, I would say, lifestyles, but then also very unique backstories, very unique stories. And so wanting to transform myself into one of those individuals, I decided I need to start some sort of company, some sort of entrepreneurial venture.
Interesting, but that's not such an easy thing to do. So one, you got motivated by watching others, but then how did you decide on what to pursue?
So back before I started traveling, I had worked a couple different sales roles, one in the tech industry and then another one in like info products and consulting space. At one of those organizations, I was allowed to hire like subcontractors. So I had a virtual assistant from the Philippines helping me out with a lot of the sales follow-up tasks, calendaring, emails, some calls. Because when I was working those roles, I was also full-time in school trying to finish my university degree. And so I really had a lot to juggle. And I wanted to use a virtual assistant or get some assistance on the job career side of things so that I could focus and do my honest work on the university side and still get my degree and have it be mine. And so I was able to juggle both because of that virtual assistant for sure. And then in another role, I wasn't actually allowed to utilize subcontractors due to the nature of the industry. And so I was like, that one was a lot more difficult to juggle. But then I was kind of towards the end of my academic career anyway. And it was kind of winding down. I didn't have as many classes. And so I thought when I was traveling, okay, what is a business that I could get into? I also met a lot of different individuals who were very, very talented and working remote jobs online. Maybe they didn't have their own business. Maybe they just had a small agency or they were freelancers. And I thought, why don't I connect these wonderful people over here in Central and Eastern Europe to business owners and entrepreneurs back home in Montana, where I'm originally from. And so when I went back to Montana, when I was traveling from Europe, that's kind of how it began. I got a co-working membership. And then I just kind of started networking this co-working space and seeing where I could assist and make placements.
So what insights did you glean, or did you have some aha moment in terms of focusing on Eastern Europe and Latin America?
Yeah. So what I noticed was there was a significant time zone issue with some of the hires in Southeast Asia. And what happened with that is over a certain amount of time, I'd see performance go down just because someone's working in the middle of the night. It's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., especially if I'm hiring for businesses that are based on Pacific Standard Time or Mountain Standard Time. And so it was almost like a little bit too far to make the jump. And that's why I started looking more into Latin America as this grew, because I was like, how can I offer like a near shore option that could be on the same time zone or just a couple hours ahead to kind of maintain that quality. There was a variety of other reasons that like we switched from first starting in the Philippines and then Central Eastern Europe, staying in Central Eastern Europe, and then adding in Latin America. But I would say the time zone is definitely one of the things as well.
And what did you find were some of the unique challenges when you first went into Latin America or Eastern Europe that you had not anticipated?
So before I moved here to Warsaw, one of the biggest challenges was the the branding. People seeing our job ads online or seeing different posts in different Telegram groups, networking groups, and knowing that we're a legit company. We're not just some sort of like WhatsApp scam or Telegram scam for employment. And I think that's one of that challenge turned into one of our strengths because now that I live over here, we're able to build like a local brand. People are able to understand that we live in the areas that we're sourcing from. We understand the culture and we're a bridge to working in the US. But when we first started, so response rates on job ads and job inquiries were significantly low. And so now that I'm here, but that was one of the first significant challenges that I didn't really expect when I had started it.
Interesting. So, are most of the people you match up with are the workers in Eastern Europe or Latin America? What's kind of the mix that you're finding?
It really depends on role, but I find right now at our company, it's split almost 50-50, which is great. For more client facing, like sales type roles, executive assistant roles, where they really need to be on that same time zone, or maybe it's preferred, we source from Latin America. But for anything more complex, IT, development, project managers, technical backgrounds, we're sourcing from Balkan region, Central and Eastern Europe, so Ukraine, Poland, and those types of areas.
And why did you decide to set up in Poland versus, let's say, Latin America?
I had just been to Europe more. I hadn't been to Latin America yet, and pretty much all of my travels have been through Europe or like Turkey and this side of the world. Latin America, I have not been to actually yet.
So, now how long have you been in Poland, working and living in Poland?
About a year and a half at this point.
Okay. So, tell me some of the aha moments you've had being in Poland in terms of the culture, or working, or even how the people may be different or similar.
Here, I don't speak Polish. I know very few words. I can get around like with taxi drivers, ordering food, like those types of things, very, very small. But there's such a reach of American influence and culture where if I meet someone who's Polish, they'll tell me something about some pop culture thing that happened that I didn't even know about because I'm not paying attention to the news in the States, right? And so it's very interesting to kind of see that. And so I think the cultures are very aligned. And so when I was over here living here in Poland, I was able to notice that, okay, this is good culture fit, that these people want to look to America, work with America, and the cultures are very aligned. And so that's something that has helped as well.
It's interesting. When I've traveled, I've noticed a lot of times people overseas know the geography of the U.S. better than sometimes the locals in the U.S. And it is true. I mean, they keep up with a lot of the culture and things that you may not, you know, anticipate or predict. But it's amazing how much details they know about the U.S. without ever being there. And so you've had a very high percentage rate of matching and success. Tell me, what do you think has led to that?
I think in the not just in the beginning, but throughout the process of building this company, consistently asking customers for feedback and maybe not in the sense of, oh, please fill out this feedback form because there's sometimes not really that much of an incentive for them to do that, especially if they already have the employee. But having a close relationship with the customers and sending them a text of, hey, could we have some feedback on this? Or this is what I'm thinking as a revenue model, or this is what I'm thinking as an add-on. Like, what are your thoughts about this? So not taking a super formal approach to getting customer feedback has allowed us to get more customer feedback than if we had just tried the traditional way and some of the traditional methods, and then add that into our business. And so one of them has been onboarding. In the very beginning, when I was sourcing talent, it was like, okay, here's the talent. Now you guys have met and we're good to go, right? And it was very much a handoff. But what I realized is the talent, for them to succeed, they really needed some sort of standard operating procedures, blueprints, especially if they were working with a first-time founder or solopreneur, or maybe someone who wasn't used to working remote or working with a bunch of digital team members. And so we basically built out standard operating procedures and a blueprint for onboarding. We've kind of morphed that over time to build more into a step-by-step process for that onboarding. Because what we realized is like we're doing a bunch of work in the recruitment process. We get a bunch of candidates to almost right on the touchdown line. And let's say they sign up, and then there'd be some sort of drop off after 30 days, or the first 30 days weren't as good as we wanted, or the first 90 days, 6 months weren't as good as we wanted. And I thought, okay, like where is the ball being dropped? Why isn't this 100% success rate for this client? Why is it only like 85, 90? And although that's like successful, it's not quite a standardized level of perfection that we would like or we'd want to aim for. And so that was something that we kept implementing and focusing on, was how can we improve this? How can we make the onboarding process just better and more just no-brainer, and answer as many questions as we can before they onboard the person.
It almost sounds like you're doing an onboarding process for the client and the worker, right? I mean, in other ways, you have to kind of set up the SOPs for the client in order to set it up properly for the worker. It sounds like, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So there's kind of two parts. There's a contextual onboarding where there's info about the company. So this can be, mission, values, what are the best practices, who are the people, what's the organization chart. That can always be done by the founder, depending on the size of the company. And then there's a role-specific onboarding. The role-specific onboarding has KPIs. What does this person need to know to be successful in this role? We kind of split it up that way, and that's our process for onboarding. In the very beginning, it wasn't a very clear-cut process. And over time, we've just refined it. And from different clients, we get like little bits of feedback that they'll give to us. And I'm like, that's a good idea. Let's add that into this onboarding process. For example, one of them was, oh, I wish I had a checklist of things to do. And so it was like, okay, well, let's make a checklist. What do we go through when we onboard people? Well, they need access to softwares. They need access to like Slack, those types of things. They need to sign their documents, all of these types of step-by-step instructions that were very simple to us internally because we've hired hundreds of people at this point. Our clients don't know what they don't know. We had to get that out on paper.
So how long is this process to actually kind of train the client to be a good client?
We do as much as we can during our kind of 10 days of sourcing and interviewing. So it's a lot of communication. It's different documents that we send over. The actual onboarding for the talent, we like to look at it at a 30-ish day time frame. And so the first couple of weeks really focusing on the communication and getting feedback on your onboarding process, getting them access, making sure they know like what's expected of them, those types of activities. And by that 30-day point, they should be ramped up, and it should be pretty clear if they are an A player or maybe they're not the right fit.
So good. This sounds like this takes time and effort and a lot of details. Is this all billable, or is this something you're doing extra on top of your services?
It's something that we bake into the services.
Okay, well, that's good. So that now you've obviously had a lot of experience interviewing and hiring a lot of workers from Eastern Europe and Latin America. So I'm curious, what are some insights now you've gained on how to make sure that someone is going to be a good performer?
So I would say the biggest thing is making sure that you know exactly like what you're hiring for, and making sure the role is really solid and the job description is really solid before we start searching for the talent. If we have a client who says, oh, well, I need an executive assistant, or maybe I need this project manager, they need to know these two softwares, they just need to be able to kind of figure it out. That's really not enough input from the client for us to know the exact type of person that they want. And so it's less about trying to match a candidate perfectly to this job description. It's more about getting the job description, getting what we actually want done with KPIs out first with the clients, And then we can go find the candidates. Because if the job description is created in the right way, if there's a scorecard, if there's a clear path for growth, A players, truly talented individuals will see that in different job descriptions. And they'll be like, well, I chose your job description. We're having this interview because there's a clear path to growth. And we've had that feedback 10 plus times from candidates where they're like, oh, this looked super clear. And it was a super clear job description. I knew exactly what was expected of me. And that's really what candidates want. They don't want to join a job where they're just an island remotely and just like cut off, right?
So you mentioned earlier that you see customer insights the non-traditional way. Tell me some of the methods you use and why you found them to be effective for you.
So one was the text that I mentioned, having a very casual relationship with my clients and not maybe asking in a formal like form. The other is client interviews. So on our YouTube channel, we have 3 or 4 different client interviews. And in those interviews, I'm always surprised by what like clients say. Maybe I've already asked for feedback from them and they give me some sort of answer. But then when we're on a client interview, they will give us some more insight. The client interview is basically us having a conversation for 5 to 10 minutes, asking about, okay, where were they at before they started working with us? Where are they at after? And then what was that process like? And if there's anything they have to say to someone who's thinking about hiring remote talent, what would it be? And that kind of process is an interesting way to get that customer feedback because it's not in a setting where you're not asking someone like directly for that feedback. It kind of just flows very, very naturally, which is interesting.
So I'm curious, what are the top 2 or 3 aha moments you've had in these customer insights that you said, wow, I never thought of that, but it's so true?
One has been some of the tech talent and then what the person has done in the business that was more than the job description asked. So one of my clients, Amanda, she runs a grant writing and consulting company. Her worker from Ukraine, she basically had nominated her for different business awards. And then Amanda won these business awards. She built out an entire project management software. Like she built out the Monday, she set it all up and then got Amanda's other team members enrolled and using it, built out all the documentation. And that was something that wasn't listed in that job description, right? She just went above and beyond with that proactivity. And so it's very interesting. And those are sometimes things I don't know about unless I'm speaking with that client in that interaction. And it's something that I want to know more about those insights and their success that they're having.
Have you found like an ideal interval on how often to talk to clients for these insights?
I found usually about every month I'm checking in with the clients. Some of it has been looking at social medias. And so if we have a really good experience with a client and we hire someone for them and they're hiring for another role and they don't come back to work with us, did we do a good enough job or why aren't they instantly just turning and choosing to work with us? And so we monitor a lot of like social media accounts and try to maintain that level of frequency or conversation with the client to make sure that when they think of hiring, they're thinking of working with us. And 30 days may be too long. We've kind of changed revenue models and some different things to have kind of an unlimited or retained staffing model that will keep that relationship basically more like frequent or better. But that's kind of the interval that we check out at is about 30 days.
So I'm curious now, you've obviously interviewed a lot of people. Have you found that there's like 3 things you look for that you know that's going to make the worker successful? And I understand you're talking about the job description. I think that's absolutely true. Making sure the clients give you an accurate description and they also know how to onboard a new worker. But I'm sure you must have gleaned that there might be, I don't know, 2, 3 key traits that you look for, saying, this worker is going to be probably a better candidate than this one.
Or the number one things that we look for is asking questions. So if we get to the end of an interview and we ask, what questions do you have for me? Instead of saying, do you have any questions for me? Because it's very easy for the person to say no. But we say, what questions do you have for me? If they don't have any questions, it's a little bit of a red flag. But the best candidates we've had have always had probably 4 or 5 different questions. And they're all kind of growth oriented. Okay, what's the growth path look like? What's the promotion schedule? Like in 90 days, what does success look like? How are they defining success? Those types of questions candidates are asking. That's when I know at the end of an interview, I'm like, okay, this person is truly thinking about growing with this job instead of just like, oh, I got a new job. Like, I think I'm going to just look on LinkedIn in 5 months for another job. I would say that's one of the number one things that we're looking for.
That makes sense. I mean, they're already starting to be focused on the KPI, right? Which makes sense. And I think it also shows a bit of, as you said, that they're thinking, but also a bit of a hunger to make sure that they can meet the expectations that you're setting.
Correct.
So, what do you see for the future of this? I mean, because I think what you're doing is quite interesting because there's lots of companies that are out there, but you seem to have found a niche to find a better way to match people. Um, so, what else differentiates you that's made you successful so far?
I think a lot of it has been looking at processes that are working well in other industries and trying to incorporate them. And so I have a friend who is in the software world and does a lot with no code, low code, and then actually coded softwares as well. And just seeing some of the ways that he makes things more efficient and then thinking, okay, how can we bring this into our own business? For example, skill tests used to be a thing that we had to create with a client. Say, okay, like what are the first 30 days going to look like? What relevant questions are they going to be answering? How can we make this into like a skill test for a candidate to complete and then us to judge them for? Now we've built a tool internally that is able to do this. So basically, ask them a couple questions, they respond via their voice, and then it auto grades them and gives us that feedback. And we kind of set the difficulty level depending on what the skills are. And so that kind of internal tool that we've created is something that I think that we might eventually release to the public, but it has really changed our business and how we do the skill tests because it's just so seamless. Just send an email real quick and then they just take the test and you get the feedback instantly. It's great.
Nice. So you're thinking about spinning this off as a separate skills test tool, huh?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking about as well. Kind of adding a SaaS.
And what are the insights that led you to develop this tool to be so effective? And what did you know that there's certain, first of all, how long is it? I'm just curious.
You get 10 questions.
Okay. That's pretty
Yeah,
concise.
it's 10 questions.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, you must have obviously had some really good insights to develop a 10 question that,
Yeah.
and I'm just curious, how accurate do you think it assesses the skill set?
I think for like coding and technical things, very strong. For some of the other scenarios, maybe if they're more like soft skills, it's hard to quantify someone's communication level, right? The softer skills are way tougher to really quantify. But for the more technical roles, it's been pretty strong. This tool, the reason we created it was what I was noticing is we have usually a screening interview and then a second round interview, and then we have some sort of skill test. And what happened is we got a bunch of these candidates through these first couple rounds of interviews. And then let's say we put 10 through and only five advance. Let's just use basic numbers. What would happen is we're asking a client for a skill test, or maybe we previously asked them for it and it's not done, or they're still trying to work on it, or they need extra help creating the skill test. It's going to delay that time in that interview process. And meanwhile, of those five candidates, a week goes by, two already got other jobs. We're left with three candidates, right? So it was a thing where there was a constraint or a bottleneck in our process where things weren't moving along quickly. So we're like, okay, how can we make this a lot quicker? We may not even need that client input. We may already know like what's the templated test to use depending on the role, and then make it streamlined. So the instant we get off the interview, and if they're good, then we can send them that skill test and get that back same day, next couple of days, instead of having to wait, email back and forth and delay it that way.
And are you also regularly looking at other markets other than Eastern Europe and Latin America, or that's pretty much the focus for now?
I've looked at South Africa. One of the things with South Africa, it's been kind of hit or miss with some of the infrastructure, rolling brownouts, like electricity issues. Um, I've had some really good candidates from there that we've interacted, we've placed, and there's actually one or two that we've placed that are solid and there. So maybe still exploring South Africa, native English speaking. So that's great as well. Africa is really interesting because there are really good pockets of talent. One of my friends, he runs a software company, and a lot of their talent is from Ethiopia. And he's saying this is like the next place to be. So it's interesting to look into these places and see how talent is developing and if they're solid places. And I don't know the best method on that. If I have, talent on every continent, or if I just stick with two hubs and really build a brand locally there. I'm not really sure what the best path forward is on some of that stuff.
I assume most of these people do the bulk of the business in English, correct?
Correct. I have one or two clients where they're speaking in Russian. some people in Miami, and then some people in London. But their English skills need to be solid because those people, although they're speaking internally in Russian, they're speaking to clients in English, and so it's pretty much always in English. But also, let's say you're a business that's in like Texas or Florida. A lot of call centers, they employ bilingual employees, right? And so we have some clients in Houston, we have some clients in Miami, and having someone from Latin America who obviously speaks Spanish and also English at a very high level, if they're interacting with clients, it's great just because so many Hispanic individuals are in the south of the US.
So what opportunities looking forward do you see, and what are some of your aspirations for Zabota?
So one of the opportunities is some of that tech that we talked about for some of these HR teams. I don't want to go the route of an AI interviewer. I try to look at things from the candidate perspective. I don't think that I would enjoy being on an interview with like an AI where it's just like I feel like I'm a cow being pushed through like this like vetting process. I want to make something that all parties actually want to utilize. So I think that's a big opportunity, and this opportunity is keeps changing. But the remote work thing, if COVID hadn't happened, like people would be pretty resistant to more remote work. It would take a lot longer for remote work to just enter the workforce. College was majority online during those times anyway. People were out of office and now needing to like return to office, and so it's made it a much more attractive market to be in. And I think as things keep going along, it'll be a good market to be in just because of the openness to remote work.
Yeah, I think it's changed quite a bit, and I think people are much more open to it. In fact, I think you might be at a different stage now with the whole remote industry where don't have to be sold on remote, but they're looking for quality remote workers. And it seems like that's what you've kind of tapped into, is to provide a higher level worker that can, meet the needs. And I can see some advantages with the time difference too, right?
Yeah, the time difference is interesting because it really always comes down to the client's preferences and how their company rolls. Sometimes there's people who they're up early at 5, 6 in the morning. Maybe they're on the East Coast and they're like, I like to have things kind of done and ready for me to catch up on. It doesn't need to be synchronous work, or there can be a little bit of overlap. It really depends on the role, but then just more importantly, the customer's preferences. And I think it's great. I mean, I like living over here for sure. I like to be able to work on operations, marketing type activities, very uninterrupted in the morning, and then able to talk with clients and talk with everyone in the US in the late afternoon into the evening.
So I'm curious, what role is AI playing in your industry or specifically in your company, if at all?
We use AI for a lot of meeting summaries. So all the interviews are recorded. Meeting summaries come out in AI with transcripts. Obviously, the tool that we're using for the vetting. Those are kind of our main ways that we're utilizing AI. I don't really use ChatGPT for job descriptions and like things that are like candidate facing. It just isn't quite good enough, and there's always edits you have to make with it. And so it's better to just have a framework that we run with and go with it.
Interesting. So yeah, I can see the summarizing the tool might be very useful for you guys. Do you see a future role for AI to increase, or what are your thoughts on that in the future?
I know there's a lot of companies working on like AI interviewers and some like AI matching. What I've noticed is clients will say, okay, I need this role. And you really have to sit and analyze the type of company that they are, the type of culture that they have, and what type of role they're needing. Because sometimes clients will say, I need this project manager, but no, it's really an administrative assistant or it's a customer support individual. And I think it will be hard to put some info into an AI software, at least now in this current market. It might change in a couple of years. I think it would be hard to put in those details into an AI software and then have it perfectly match candidates in our applicant tracking system or in our ATS. I think that would be difficult.
So what area would you like to focus on next for you personally and through your company that you think is something of great interest moving forward?
Our tool, but then just consistently making this process very seamless and making it very, very easy and kind of just eliminating this like border to remote work. Depending on where someone is in the stage of building their company, sometimes they are a little bit hesitant to employ remote workers. They just don't know how they're going to interact, especially if they already have an in-office team. And it's really not as hard as they might think. And so I want to make it easy for them. I want to kind of eliminate any of those fears that they may have and just make a overall better recruitment process for that remote talent into US businesses.
Interesting. So if you could have lunch or dinner with anybody in your industry, who would it be and why?
There's actually, I would probably have lunch with some competitors. There's several competitors out there, and I would actually just want to meet them. I've never interacted really with them online, but I would like to meet the competitors and speak with them, and just kind of see how they see the future of some of this stuff going. Because I think that if you are in a business where the talent is very low level, maybe just think virtual assistants, copy paste, that kind of type of stuff, AI is gunning for those types of jobs. And so how do we maintain our businesses at these higher level roles? But eventually, like AI will kind of catch up and start to replace some of these mid-level, higher level roles. So how do we make sure we evolve with the times and still have businesses? And I think that would be kind of an interesting conversation to have, because yes, it's a little bit predict the future and no one can be for sure certain, but it'd be interesting to hear what types of ideas they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder about AI, the promise as well as the threat of AI, and obviously it has both, right? So, but I think in the end, there's always going to be some opportunity as well. So, I mean, I remember when people were saying, don't let the kids use calculators because they won't know how to add, but now that's you end up acquiring other additional skills, right? Yeah, it just kind of moves the skill sets. I mean, some of the basic skills maybe they can't do as well, but now they have all these other skills, so they can maybe use their time more wisely. But I think it's interesting what's happening with the development of all these skills that are going to be necessary not only for the current work environment, but also moving forward. Because even to use AI properly, you need to really be able to articulate what you want properly to get the best out of it.
Yeah, the prompt engineering is a is a thing that's kind of on the rise, because ChatGPT, you can have a conversation with it and it'll give you some sort of output. But if you really think about it and you really like structure it and maybe ask the questions in a specific way with different bits of information and input, you can get a totally different answer, and it might be that more correct answer that you want. And so you really got to play around with it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this interview. I think it's going to be a long time before AI does these podcasts, but I think it still needs the human-to-human interaction for those aha moments. So I appreciate you joining me and from Warsaw, and I look forward to hearing how you progress in the next couple of chapters with what you do with your company. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com. And make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.